Welcome to Jack's Corner, where conservative values meet national headlines, and truth and reality have a seat at the table. From Louisville, Kentucky, here's your host, Jack Richardson.
Hey folks, well, welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. Today I want to talk about the Biden cover-up. Evil has a new home. I have a feeling you already know what that's going to be. Proof that liberalism is a mental illness, the false and fraudulent compassion of the Democrat left, the truth about the Qatar gift, and if I can squeeze it in, the historic trip of Trump to the Middle East. So let's get into it. You know, the biggest cover-up in U.S. history is basically occurring right now, or has occurred basically in the last 4 years, but we're seeing the fruits, we're seeing the evidence come out now about it. Really, if you were observant, you should have known anyway. But another reason to never believe or trust a Democrat, much less the media, is what happened to you and what they did with regards to the cover-up of Biden's so-called competence and fitness to be president. They lied to your face. No big surprise there, but I believe it is criminally actionable. And you say, about what? Well, the tapes have just been released of Special Counsel Hur's interview of former, and what a good sounding word that is, President Biden. It is even more shocking how mentally unfit he was, and that was only halfway through his term. Do yourself a favor and listen to them. Listen to those tapes. Folks, only by the grace of God did we not experience a disaster or threat of nuclear war. Oh, but wait, we did. We suffered disaster. Millions of illegals and criminals flooded over the border, and men were allowed to play in women's sports, and transgender was the craze, and drag queen story hour was pushed as free speech, and all the COVID lies and lockdowns and the destruction of tens of thousands of businesses, all supported by Biden or those who really were the president that you didn't elect. And every Democrat lied to you, telling you that he was as sharp as ever, even in the media. If you had eyes and ears, you should have known that, and most did. But it should never be forgiven, nor should it ever be forgotten. Those who fostered the lie in the administration and in the media need to be prosecuted and jailed, and there is going to be a congressional hearing on it, and I can't wait for that. The whole of the Democratic Party is corrupt to the core, ethically and morally. There has to be accountability, and only you can deliver it in the midterm elections next year. Now that those audio tapes are out revealing what most of us already knew with our own eyes and ears, Biden was clearly mentally unfit for office while surrounded by some of the most radically left ideologues ever. You want to talk about insurrection? This was it, folks. And it looks like a congressional investigation may uncover that, and hopefully some prosecutions will result as a consequence. But I pray that our new Justice Department will prosecute to conviction those who improperly exercised presidential authority and failed to protect us from the danger we were in. Now you have Democrats and the legacy media scurrying about and lying even more, saying that they didn't know that Biden was so debilitated, even when the rest of us knew it and could see it. Yeah, they were gaslighting you. Let me give you an example. Representative James Clyburn of South Carolina, who's part of the Black Caucus in Congress, is now covering his butt by saying he never saw it. Well, you're hearing that from a lot of them, but he in particular, because he's the one that basically gave Biden the bump where he won the primary back in 2016 because he threw his weight around down in South Carolina and Biden won the primary down there. Let me tell you a little bit about Clyburn. He is only in the leadership position he is because he has been in Congress almost longer than anyone else and is from a district that would vote for a pig if you could dress it up. Only by virtue of tenure does he have any voice because he has historically been radically left, a pathological liar, and a racist to boot. To make things worse for the Democrats is that Biden has been diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer. With annual checkups, as all presidents get, there is no way that this could not have been diagnosed long ago. In fact, if you listen to some of the doctors that have been interviewed on TV of late, they said he had to have had this years ago, before he was even president. And that's because it's a slow process. It's been there for a long, long time, and they knew it. There's no way that it could have been avoided. So they covered that up too. In fact, it was kept from the public. Even with this knowledge, he was going to run for re-election. Imagine that. And how many more instances do you need of the impossibility of the Democrat left to tell the truth? Now I want to do a little side here. Yeah, everybody's giving their, this is a phrase, folks, that I just hate. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. Well, I'm going to get into this in a minute, but this is a phony compassion. Everybody has been indoctrinated in, well, you got to show compassion. Well, first of all, what does it mean when you say our thoughts are with you? Does that do you any good? Or are you just lying just to sound good? And our prayers are with you? Well, first of all, many of those people that say our thoughts and prayers are with you, they've never prayed a day in their life. And when they say our prayers are with you, well, what God are they praying to? See, and even if they do occasionally pray, do they really pray in this instance? And how many times have somebody asked you to pray for them and you said you would, but you didn't? You know, I hate trite phrases like this. I hate phony stuff like this. And so, but I'll tell you this much. My thoughts and prayers are not with Biden because I think of all the millions of people that have died and suffered as a consequence of his fraud and his leftist politics. I can tell you one thing right now. 1 million people over in Ukraine and Russia are dead today because of that man. And that's going to be on his soul. But there's a lot more than that. The people in Afghanistan, and you can go around the world and see what the consequences are basically of his presidency. Yeah, he's got a lot to answer for. If anything that I'm going to pray, and I would suggest this for a lot of Christians, I'm going to pray the imprecatory Psalms. Basically, that's a curse that God's people can pray on the evil. And I'll get more into that in a minute. But back to the point. All the Democrats are trying to save their necks basically over this now uncovered cover-up that they had on Biden's competency to be president. They were all part of the cover-up as they all defended the indefensible of Biden's incompetence. Moreover, they are also guilty of insurrection because others that were not elected were controlling the government. They were basically your president, and you never elected them. You don't even know who they are. This is just one more reason to never trust or believe a Democrat because they were all part of it. Just go back and check the record. Listen to the tapes. Listen to what they all said. They all gave excuses, but they knew better. You know what? They have no excuse because they saw exactly what you saw on TV and why you voted against Kamala Harris, because you knew that they were lying to you. Folks, this is not opinion, because the proof, the facts, and the evidence is there in bright, bold neon. Now that the crushing truth is out with the audio tapes, you can't chalk it off as just an opinion without any merit. You should be outraged to the point of demanding that any Democrat who defended Biden's competence, they should resign. Pick up the phones and pick up your pen and paper. Time to show your outrage now and in the next congressional elections. You can now start by supporting conservative organizations and Republicans who are devoted to Republican principles. Now let's move into a new topic, which I call Evil Has a New Home. Yep, evil has a home, and outside of hell and in the realm of the living, and it is in the form of a political party. Any of you who've been listening to me for a while knows that I identify that party as the Democrat Party, or what I call the Democrat left, because its members all act in unison, and none of them ever deviate from the wicked policies and the lies that they tell. More people are beginning to realize that. There is no trust in the Democrat Party as they have lost the ability to see themselves as others see them. Their lies have become so transparent, but they are blind to them. You know, They are like the old story of the emperor who has no clothes. He was convinced he was wearing the most beautiful royal garments ever, when in fact he was standing naked before everyone. And that's what the Democrats should be to you right now, because they're standing naked. Their lies are naked before you, and you should be able to see it. The Democrats can not only not tell the truth anymore, but they are oblivious as to how transparent their lies are. Now, if you can see their lies as they are, then that imposes upon you to take the right kind of action. And that's at the voting booth. Now, as many of you know, I have also shown myself to be what I call an equal opportunity criticizer. I have gone after numerous Republicans and held their feet to the fire, both on the national level and here in Kentucky. In a recent podcast, I listed 4 Republicans in Congress that need to go. And before I go further, I want to define some terms, and the first one is hypocrite. In Webster's dictionary, a hypocrite is defined as a person who pretends to have virtues or qualities he or she doesn't have, and also a person whose actions contradict their stated beliefs or feelings. Now, following up on that, I want to deductively lead you to another thing that you need to consider, and that is a verse from Scripture regarding the fate of liars. Revelation 21:8, quote, "But as far as the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for murderers, the sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death." Folks, hell will be their reward, and we are not talking about what some erroneously refer to as just little white lies. I don't think the Democrats are capable of little white lies. The Democrat left and the entire establishment prevaricate, perjure, lie, and deceive you constantly. They will lie even when the truth fits better. How do they get by with it? Well, I'll tell you. We let them. We do not hold them accountable, or those who aid and abet them, which is basically the legacy media. There is no penalty to them for lying, and last but not least, there are the simple-minded amongst us, and the fools, and those who live in envy, which the Democrat Party feed to create these ravenous and emotionally unstable people who take to the streets and commit violent acts, all to the benefit of the Democrats. Remember, chaos benefits them. As I recently challenged everyone, I asked you to just watch and listen to the Democrats for 1 week and then fact-check them as you go. You will find that they are incapable of telling the truth. And why is that? Because it does not benefit them. The left has nothing to offer but misery. They live with a pathological ideology designed to control and suppress those they rule over so they can maintain power forever. They have no transcendent moral code except the ones that they create as they go. Let me give you a current example of the lies. As I have stated in other podcasts, and hopefully may as I get further into this podcast, of all the things that Trump has accomplished in the last 120 days that he's been in office, it has all been for the benefit of the American people, not to enrich himself. He is delivering on the promises he made to the American people. And let's not forget this. Remember, the Democrats told you for 4 years that the border was broken and couldn't be fixed? Well, Trump fixed it in 60 days. There is another big lie on the magnitude of Biden being competent to be president. How can you tolerate these kind of lies and not basically just be as mad as hell and start taking some action? Now, over my previous podcast and 200 plus articles that have been published, I've given scores of examples of the hypocrisy and the lies the Democrats have told you. President Trump has lowered inflation and the price of eggs. And remember, 2 days after he was in office, when the price of eggs didn't come down, and in the previous years, the price of eggs under Biden had gone up 64%. Well, they were on him for not lowering the price of eggs day 2 into his term. The price of groceries have gone down. He's brought billions of dollars in per day into America through the tariffs that they were trying to scare you about. And he has a bill before Congress to lower your taxes, including taxes on tips and Social Security, as well as signing an executive order to force drug prices down. So what have the Democrats proposed for you? Nothing. They have no plans and no proposals. All they do is attack and attack and lie and lie. I can't believe anyone would ever give a Democrat another thought or a chance, another vote. It's ridiculous. Have you ever heard any proposals from the Democrats that would benefit you? When they have no proposals, they attack Trump, and they have attacked everything that he has accomplished. The Democrats and the media have been telling you that Trump is failing to do what he promised. It's all false. Sadly, there's just enough stupid people out there to believe that. Now, there again is my favorite word, stupid, because every day I'm confronted by people who are selectively blind and have an irrational hatred for the man whose policies are benefiting everyone. Now, here is something to contemplate. Communist China, North Korea, Cuba, Russia, and others like them don't have a problem with stupid people. Why? Because they're not allowed to vote. But those countries who do allow stupid people to vote soon become communist and authoritarian countries. Now, that's something to delve into and to give some thought to. As I have said many times, stupidity is self-selected and has an element of immorality to it. Its roots are deeply seated in sin, and it is like the three wise monkeys. I see nothing, I hear nothing, I speak nothing. They know the truth, but deeply seated within their soul, there is a hidden sin or a reservation for sin that they protect, and they do so through voting for people who are morally bankrupt themselves and will cater to their sin. Save yourselves and your country. Wake up to the realities that there is no truth in the Democrat left, and you'd best be working to purge them from the power in government that they have and in the media. Now, with that said, I want to talk about what I think morphs into this subject particularly well, and that is what I call the proof that liberalism is a mental illness with devastating consequences. Now, before I get too deep into this mental illness part, I want to remind you that the left is very deceitful. And remember that communists, after murdering over 100 million people, realized that they had a bad name. Well, can you imagine that? So they changed and they rebranded themselves as socialists. And then socialism got a bad name and they rebranded themselves as liberals. And then liberalism got a bad name, and then so they started rebranding them as progressives. And of course, who are the progressives today? Well, it's the Democrats. And yes, the Democrat Party has been subsumed by evil, but they rebrand themselves, and you have to be careful about how these things are constantly changing. It's just like with DEI. We think that it's been gotten rid of by an executive order from Trump. No, they are fighting it tooth and nail. And one of the most deceitful things that they've come up with of late is they are now rebranding DEI. All they've done is they've changed the names, and you see a lot of the same actors still there, and they're still preaching DEI. They are still preaching reverse racism, and they've not gotten rid of it. Frankly, folks, we need to pass a law and basically say that this is fraud, and you can be indicted and jailed for this type of fraud. But I won't go too more far afield in that. Let's get back to the topic of the mental illness. Because in a recent podcast by Victor David Hansen, he gave a tip of the iceberg view of basically the consequences of this mental illness and how people are destroying themselves. He talked about California's problems, starting with the fact that California is over $12 billion in debt. Think about that, $12 billion in debt. And how could that be? Well, it has the highest income tax of 13.3% in the nation, the highest, and one of the highest sales taxes. It has the highest gasoline tax, the highest electricity cost, and you can add to that, they have half of the nation's homeless and half of the illegals they have invited into their state with sanctuary policies. And then they gave them Medi-Cal, which is a Medicare, which is bankrupting the system. California has a poverty rate of around 20%, and their schools rank think about this, in the bottom 10%. Consequently, hundreds of thousands of intellectual assets in the form of people are moving out of the state annually, as well as major companies. And all of these tree-hugging climate change psychotics that run the state live in these poshest areas overlooking the ocean while the state is collapsing. This is truly an example of the mental illness of liberals and leftists and atheists. They keep voting for these toxic ideologues that are destroying the state. And that has an effect upon you. Now, let me give a little aside here. The big fires that they had out there in California where hundreds and thousands of homes were destroyed in that devastating fire. But the reason that there was a fire is because they didn't have water. And the reason they didn't have water is that they were worried about a little tiny fish. So they tore down dams and they didn't fill the reservoirs. And they let the rains from the winters and the melting snows go out into the Pacific Ocean. And so what happened? They didn't have the water to put out the fires. They also wouldn't let them do forestry in the right way where dead wood and things were cleared out so there would be no fuel for the fire. And so how does that affect you? How does what happens in California affect you? Well, take a look at your homeowner's insurance rates. You're helping to pay for the mental insanity of those in control of California. Now, let me get back on point here. It's one of my favorite things, and that is to place blame where blame belongs. And yes, you've got it right. It's the Democrats. The home of evil, the home of psychosis. If we passed a law outlawing bad decisions, the left would never be able to make another decision. As I've said many times, and history has proven it out, there is something fundamentally and psychologically wrong with the left, and they lack any syllogistic or deductive reasoning. And if there is a choice between a good decision or a bad one, they're always going to choose the bad one. They are filled with resentment and hatred for anyone who disagrees with them. And I have dealt with so many of them that you can almost see the psychosis coming through their eyes and their facial features. It's like a blank stare, for which I call them and refer to them as the walking dead. I know that many mature Christians can see who are demonically influenced or controlled, and I've seen many of what I call the walking dead. But so as to not get off into a theological bent here, suffice it to say that my solution to the California problem is, and I know that this could not legally be implemented, but treat Californians just like trying to control a contagion. I would like to see a fantastical way that anyone registered as a Democrat in California could move from that state to any other state so that the infection, the contagion couldn't spread, that mental disease couldn't spread. Some call it a cognitive dissonance, but this is something that I don't want spread to other states so that they can ruin other states that are doing it right. I call it an outright detachment, this cognitive dissonance and the mental illness of the left. I call it a detachment from reality and the truth, which starts with a hedonistic lifestyle which replaces the God of the universe with the new religions of climate change and open borders and environmentalism. Their high priests take daily sacrifices of our economy and wealth security and well-being. Remember, without God, there's no order, and without order, there is no freedom. And given the horrendous statistics in California, there is no freedom. All the while, the elite that get elected retreat to their Valhallas, their Mount Olympus, their Palisades overlooking the Pacific, and they care nothing about you. Nothing will change, and you must educate yourself as to the nature of those on the left and purge your schools and universities of these people who will do harm to you and your children, who are in their formative years and are being hardwired by these psychotics. Save your kids, as they will either grow up to think normally and live productive lives, or be like so many of the voters in California who are bringing disaster upon themselves. And yes, you're even having to pay, and you're suffering as a consequence as well. So now I want to tie that into the false and fraudulent compassion of the Democrat left, and I mentioned that just briefly earlier. As with their father, the devil, the Democrat left parade around as a force for good, but evil to the core. In fact, Christians all too often do the bidding of the devil, thinking their works will sanctify them, when if they only knew the word, they would know that it is God's grace, not your works, by which you are saved. However, lest I stray too far into theology again, suffice it to say that an alarming amount of Christians cannot see nor recognize evil. They are non-discerning, and that raises the question of, are they falsely assured of the salvation they think that they have? Dr. Jordan Peterson had something really great to say, and he discussed what he called the psychopathic hijacking of religious moral authority and delves into the complexities of evil and its various prototypes. As I just stated, and as he further develops, evil masquerades as benevolence or compassion, manipulating trust and morality. I call this sinful naivety or willful ignorance on the part of a lazy and slothful soul. This message was echoed by Dr. Peterson recently with his guest Jocko Willink in an interview, one statement of which is so pertinent to the consequences of the slothful soul. Willink stated that if you learn discipline, you work hard, train hard, and study hard, you can become a good, smart, and strong human being. To which Peterson also aptly responded, you need to give more consideration when you are young as to who you could be as opposed to who you are. Let's say that again. You need to give more consideration when you are young as to who you could be as opposed to who you are. That's what the younger generation needs to hear and do. As I have repeatedly counseled and stated to people, it is what you fail to nourish. That is the gift that God has given you, that if you don't use it, it will rot within you. And the consequences are much like the one-talent servant in Scripture, where the lazy servant was cast out into the outer darkness. But circling back to the political condition that exists in this country with the frauds on the Democrat left, all too many Americans and Christians fall for the Democrat left's fraudulent compassion. For example, if someone has a mental condition and think themselves a different sex, and these are usually children because they are so subject to the power of suggestion, which is happening in the schools, then they are content to be compassionate to mutilate them physically when the prescription calls for psychoanalysis and treatment. Yet they will call you transphobic if you don't agree to allow mutilating surgery and that'll permanently destroy that victim's life. But the Democrat left cares not at all. All they want is another victim that will vote for them. Sounds like what the devil does to us with sin, doesn't it? There are hundreds of warped, psychotic, and fraudulent cures the Democrat left poses in the guise of compassion, and the end result is disaster to the victim and the nation, and all it does is give the Democrat left political power. These people, folks, are dangerous, and it's time that Americans wake up to the fraud. So the bottom line is, know thy enemy. Satan prowls around in many disguises, and if you had a worthy pastor, you would know that. Yep, Satan does have many names and demons. Based solely on the evidence, the Democrat left's voting and their proposals and their mandates and false compassion is demonic, folks. So what is the cure? Do not support what is evil, lest you be evil. Now, I want to get off and talk about briefly about what I call the truth of the Qatar gift. And that really also ties into another Democrat lie. You've heard that Qatar is going to gift the United States a $400 million wide-bodied plane. And the left has been attacking Trump as corrupt for even discussing it. Well, Qatar is offering to transfer to our, not president, but the United States Air Force, a 13-year-old $400 million wide-bodied plane for what? To serve as another Air Force One, to replace the aging Air Force One that we have until Boeing finishes the new ones that are under construction. Boeing was very delayed in completing the new Air Force One and its backup. That's sad, folks, and unforgivable. Boeing, like other businesses, were too busy with incompetent people running the company and its DEI policies. They always had an excuse. Do not forget what we were able to do back during World War II. We could build a tank every 4 hours and a ship every 4 days. All the while that Trump was doing remarkable things for you, crooked Hillary Clinton took the stage, and every other Democrat criticized Trump for a pay-to-play scheme as it related to the gift that Qatar wanted to give the United States with the plane. If ever there was anyone guilty of pay-for-play and outright corruption, it is Hillary and the Democrats. Let me remind you that while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. She and Bill Clinton's foundation got hundreds of millions donated to them from other countries to the Clinton Foundation all around the world. Joe Biden got, as vice president, millions of dollars. And he is actually videotaped. It's on videotape, folks, of him shaking down Ukraine in violation of the law. And he should have been indicted. It was a felony what he did. He personally received millions from our enemies and went soft on them when it came to policies designed to protect America. Now, back to the plane. Can you imagine declining a gift of $400 million? Trump doesn't get the plane for his own enrichment. It is being given to the United States Air Force and then goes to the Trump Library Foundation after Trump's term is over. But all the Democrats can think about is how to blame Trump for what they have been doing for years. Biden grifted and enriched himself, taking money from our enemies while serving as vice president and president. So here's a news flash and a bombshell for you. Now listen carefully. And this is to further exemplify how dishonest the Democrat left and the media are. The gifting of the Qatar plane started under Biden. That's right. The discussions with regards to the gifting of that plane started under Biden, not Trump. You haven't heard that from the media, have you? And you didn't hear that from the Democrats. Again, another lie. Why would you ever trust them? And why was it discussed? As stated, Air Force One is 30 years old or older, and its backup is not available as it's been reported it's having structural issues. How could this happen? It's simple. Corrupt Democrat policies such as LGBTQ and drag queen story hours for children, transgender reassignments, and DEI and ESG and all that stuff were more important. How many of you knew or even heard that replacing the Air Force One was so urgent or that discussions with Qatar started with Biden? You didn't. All you heard from the lying, demonic Democrat left was how corrupt Trump was in getting a gift of $400 million from Qatar when it was really going to the Air Force. Are you mad yet? How much longer will people continue to place any trust or their votes in the Democrat Party or the media for that matter? What do you do about it? Well, tell your friends, family, associates, neighbors. The truth is the solution. Ignorance is the enemy. Change your political party registration and never vote Democrat because it's unlikely that you're going to see any transformation in that party in the foreseeable future. Now I want to move on to Trump's historic trip to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. And this is a contrast to Democrat leadership. Isn't it great to have a president focused on peace for a change? Trump is the president of peace. He went to the Middle East preaching peace. In fact, there were no wars in his first term, and American men and women were not dying on foreign battlefields. Just recently, he brought about a ceasefire between India and Pakistan, both of which are nuclear powers. He recently defeated the Houthis in Yemen, who were firing on shipping vessels trying to enter the Suez Canal, which increased everyone's prices because of higher shipping costs. He ended that conflict, and he's now begun the process of normalizing relations with Syria. During Trump's trip to Saudi Arabia, he strengthened ties that Biden had damaged and brought home $1.5 trillion in investment commitments. He also facilitated the biggest plane order in Boeing's history from Qatar, tightened the alliances with all the countries in the region, and established relations with Syria after decades of conflict and strife, and in so doing pushed Russian influence away from the area. Moreover, Trump reestablished the push for the Abrahamic Accords, which would bring peace between the Arab world and Israel. That is incredible. So what did the Democrats do during Trump's 120 days in office? Well, they complained about the plane that Qatar was gifting to the U.S. for the president. They called Trump corrupt, unethical, and wrong in accepting a gift from a country who is problematic, but as the old saying goes, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. It is a poor strategy to keep pushing these countries into the Chinese sphere and allow China to gain control over the Middle East oil. Folks, this is so simple, but the Democrats just don't get it. Well, I think they do, but they're more on the side of the totalitarian left, the Marxist left, than they are our constitutional America's constitutionalism. They want total power forever. Now, while Trump was making America richer and more secure, the Democrats were fighting Trump on his proposed budget. The Democrats offered you nothing other than trying to raise your taxes an average of over $2,000 per household. Have you heard that? If Trump's budget bill does not go through, your taxes will increase $2,000 per household. And guess what? The Democrats will blame Trump for it. But that's what they want. The Democrats have not come up with any plan to help you. Trump's budget bill will lower taxes, including tax on tips and Social Security. Then he signed an executive order for lowering prescription drug prices. So I ask you, what have the Democrats done for you lately? You see, President Trump and the Republicans can point to specifics and things that they are doing positively that benefit you. You can't think of one thing that the Democrats are doing for you other than cursing, talking dirty, and lying. Ignoring these stark contrasts and treating it with indifference is emblematic of a psychosis. It is a cognitive dissonance. Not convinced? Well, let's continue with this comparative analysis between what Trump has done in his last 120 days compared to the Democrats. Trump has begun the process of isolating China with the tariffs, and they are working, and has brought about reciprocal tariffs with every other country, something the Democrats used to love until it was Trump using them. Reciprocal tariffs, and reciprocal means if they tax us 10%, then we tax them 10%. As the old adage goes, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You cannot think it's unfair for us to tariff other nations if they tariff our goods and block us from their markets. And shame on you if a company employs you and they cannot sell overseas because of all the tariffs, yet you're okay with that inequality, and you're okay with voting Democrat who will allow your company that employs you and puts food on your table to go out of business because of these foreign tariffs. That's biting the hand that feeds you. Now, Trump is in the process of strengthening our depleted military and brought recruitment levels back up after falling below sustainability standards under Biden. Energy production is up, and the energy costs are down. Inflation is down to 2021 levels. Groceries are down 2.8%. But the Democrats still keep complaining and still keep telling you that Trump is failing. Nope, you need to turn your anger toward the Democrats. They need to hear from you. Trump has stopped the abuse of radical leftists and Democrats of the reverse racism program known as DEI. Now, it is morphing, and lawsuits need to be brought against companies and government agencies that are continuing to implement DEI, but under a different name or a different branding. And he's banned it from schools. Trump has banned it from schools and government institutions around the country, but they are not complying with his executive order. That's where these lawsuits need to start being implemented. Trump has banned men from women's sports. Our 401ks and investments are recovering. And all the scare tactics by the Democrats about how the tariffs would ruin the economy are now proven false. We are bringing in billions of dollars a day just off the tariffs. And that's helping with our $37 trillion debt. The Democrats were quite comfortable with the rest of the world raping us with their tariff taxes. And on top of it all, Trump has brought in over $10 trillion of investments into the country, and he is working on a multi-nation peace deal in the Middle East for the recognition of Israel to bring about stability in the area for the first time in 1,000 years. So now let me ask you again, what have the Democrats been doing over the last 120 days? I will tell you, it has been nonstop attacks by them out of the fear that Trump is succeeding for American people. I'll repeat that. They are apoplectic. They are panicked. They are fearful that Trump is succeeding for the American people. You see, the Democrats and the left can only win with chaos. They are there for themselves and not for the American people. And you cannot prove me wrong on that, as no one can point to any accomplishment from them that benefited the country. The evidence and the proof is in. The Democrats gave you the astronomical cost of eggs of 64% in 2024. but then they attacked Trump on the second day of his presidency for not bringing them down. Another lie from the Democrats. The Democrats are disingenuous, deceitful, and pathological liars. These are strong terms, but they fit. Their attacks on Trump and his accomplishments are not free speech or simply a difference of opinion. It is fraud, plain and simple. Folks, you must start holding the Democrat left accountable by removal from office, as they have nothing to offer America but the destruction they brought you in the 4 years of Biden's administration, while they were lying to you again that Biden was mentally fit. Books are now coming out from even the legacy media confessing that everyone was lying about Biden's competency and ability to serve as president. Do you think that the legacy media all of a sudden got religion, decided that they were going to be good guys? No. They're trying to cover their butts because they've been caught in fraud. And the bigger fraud is who was really acting as president when you know and you saw that Biden was incompetent and had no ability to run the affairs of the office of president. Now, if Trump's budget plan does not pass, your taxes, like I said, will increase over $2,000 per year. This will harm you and the economy. And why would they want that? So they can attack and blame Trump for a failed economy, which will happen if this bill doesn't pass. For them, it's all about power. You don't matter. You are just collateral damage to them. To make matters worse, the Democrats and their leftist-appointed judges have done everything they can to stop the deportation of violent and criminal illegal migrants. How can anything be more un-American? In fact, the Democrats are un-American. The proof is there. Just look at how they vote and all their policies and all their mandates. They grew up, folks, hating America because that was what they were taught by leftist and Marxist-minded teachers and professors in our schools and universities. As I have said many times, good fruit doesn't come from a bad tree, and there is nothing that anyone can point to over the last 120 days, or the last 4 years for that matter, that the Democrats supported that was good for you or the country. They told you that the border was a problem and couldn't be solved, but Trump did it, like I said before, in 60 days. They are opposing deportation at every turn and protest if they go to deport proven criminal gang members. The Democrats have no message. They never have. They have always been empirically proven as liars and frauds in all they say and the things that they propose. Now some may say that such a broad and sweeping attack upon a group as I have just given with regard to the Democrats would be unthinkably partisan in the past because there used to be moderates in that party that would break from the party line and side with Republicans on occasion. But no longer. The party is totally in the grips of the radical left. It was unthinkable that the Democrat Party, or any political party for that matter, would be so profane, malevolent, and lacking of any statesmanship to the detriment of the citizens of this country, but they are now. I have asked hundreds of times in the last 3 months as to what have the Democrats done for you and what do they stand for. No one can answer that. You would think that something so nakedly obvious would prompt people to rise up, ostracize, and demand resignations from these frauds on the spot. Unfortunately, they don't. As long as the propaganda wing of the Democrat Party, and that is the legacy media, judges, and academia, are under the control of the Democrat left, nothing will change. Why? Because it takes people forever to wake up. And that only comes after long suffering. Our schools purge any deductive reasoning out of our kids. So now the time has come for you to do your own introspection and ask yourselves not only the question of what have the Democrats done for you, but what are you going to do about it? Okay, folks, well, I think you know what you need to do about it. You just need to get about it. And I've run a little bit long this week, but there was a lot of information to unpack, and I wanted you to hear it. I wanted you to start meditating on it. I wanted you to start taking action. And with that, I'm Jack Richardson, and this is Jack's Corner.